Alright, so for this demonstration, go ahead like you always do to your Replit.com site and go ahead and create a new REPL. So go ahead and select, of course, the C language. Enter the title, let's call it C Programming Skills using Replit Loop-de-Loo. And of course it'll be public and create REPL. Alright, so at this point you're in your code and I typically just go ahead and click on run, make sure it builds and has our hello world. So as always, we know a good way to go through the process of writing code is you first at a high level describe what it is you want to do. So we're going to, I'm going to say display startup info. And the startup info that we're going to display, we said give the program name, we said give the version of the program, we said give the developer name, we said we also want to display startup time, right, just to give us experience with that. And we also want to prompt, do you want to continue? Right, do you want to continue with this program? So that's kind of the first thing to get us going. And then we want to demo the for loop. We want to demo the while loop. We want to demo using the do while. So that's kind of our to-do list as we go through here. And remember, you should be following along as we go through this. So I'm going to begin like we've done in other programs. Go ahead and put a pound define and say that this is version 1. Alright, got a pound define version 1. And I will also notice that for display startup info, I'm thinking this would probably be better to put inside a function. So I'm going to have a function here. The function doesn't return anything, and I'll call it display startup info. And we're not going to have any inputs. Okay, so no inputs. Open and close curly braces. And now we know that when this thing starts, where it says display startup info, this is what I want to put in the display startup info. Right, that's what I want to do. So I'm actually going to grab this at that point and paste it here. In fact, I think I'll say right here, I'll say display startup info will be the name of this function. And then I can kind of map out what I want to do. Well, the program name and the version. And you know, to give us some practice here, I think what I'll do, why don't we use a pound define for program underscore name. Right, we'll pound define this. We'll call it loop-de-loo. Right, that'll be our program name. Then we have our version. Let's go ahead and do another pound define. And why don't we call this one the developer? And this is where you'd put your name. Right, so your name, put your name there. And when we look at, we want to display all of this, and we also want to display the start time. Now anytime you see the word time, you can immediately say, oh, I probably am going to go ahead. By the way, look at all those includes. And we'll cover, you know, a number of those as we go through this course. But as you can tell, a good C developer is familiar with all of these header files. We've used them at different times, and we'll use a whole bunch as we go through here. But so time.h. All right. So when we display the startup info, looking at my to-do list here, it says display the program name. So I can say, well, for the program name, I believe I'm going to do a put string of program name. Right, that'll take care of displaying the program name. And then I want the version, so I'll say, why don't we do this? Instead of put string, I'll do a print formatted and say version So version %d for a decimal value, \n. And thinking about it, I'm going to say, you know what? Most programs actually have 3 version numbers. They have a major number, a minor number, and basically a bug fix number. So I'm going to say I'm going to make this a string and say this is version 1.0.0. So again, major number, minor number, but I'll put a comment here, major, minor, and bug fix. So basically you increment these numbers every time you have a major change or you have a minor change or a bug fix for that particular version. So we'll instead of doing it as a %d, we'll do a %s as a string, and we'll say this is our version. So that's a little different than what we've done previously. Of course, we want to display the developer. So I'll say printf program by, and again %s for a string, \n, and here we'll put the developer. And then finally we've got our startup time, how to display our startup time. So for this, we know that we have something called, and this is from the previous lesson, we have something called a time. In fact, I'll even put a space here and say display startup time. And I'll say, all right, we know from a previous lesson there's something called time underscore t. I'll just call it now. And we can actually set the value of now. We can set that value by going to this function called time. And notice when it pops up and says, when you see this star, it means it wants a pointer. Where do you want me to put this? Point to it, right? Use your index finger, point to where you want me to put it. So we do the syntax, say point to now. And so that actually will fill it up with the time of now. Of course, the reason we're doing that is we want to have a character pointer. I'll just call it S. And this character pointer is going to go to C string, actually C time. So C time, open paren. And notice C time says, give me a pointer to this constant time type. Constant meaning it's not going to change it when you pass this in, but point to where that's at. So I'm going to say, okay, here's the pointer to now. And of course that returns a string to us. So I can now say printf %s, that string. It turns out I do not need a new line here because this C time actually includes a new line. So there we go. And we know that if we come in here, the first thing we can do is say display startup time. And that takes care of all of this here. Right, display the startup time, actually I say startup info. And notice I knew that because it was giving me a warning. In fact, for learning purposes, this will be a good demonstration. So it's just giving me a warning. And the reason it's giving me a warning, it could be that we've defined this somewhere else in another file. So that's why it's not an error. That's why it's only a warning. Now the fact is, if I click on run, we get the warning. Right, it's saying go to line 23, implicit declaration, meaning it doesn't know what this is. But still, it tried to build it. But when it came time to linking, and remember we said the final process is you link your code together, and you get this undefined reference. Right? There's nobody defined that anywhere. So we meant to call this display startup info. Okay, display start. Now when I click on run, oops, I got a spelling error again. So, all right, come on, Norman. Display startup info. And actually, because of this, the best thing to do is just copy this into your buffer and then just paste it, right? I highly encourage you to use copy and paste as much as possible, and that was really a good example. Right here I am making typos simply because I did not take where the master is, right? Where you define it as the master, and then copy it down there. So now when I click on run, all right, I've got my first version of this. And since the video is getting a little long, I'll stop here, but you should make sure you get yours to run at this point, and then in the next video we'll continue adding on to this. I'm Norman McIntyre. Thanks for watching.